Don't change that dial. It's time for your go-to source for all things entertainment and caffeinated. Now give it up and welcome to the stage, Eva and DJ!
I'm DJ Blokzyl.
And I'm Eva Crowe.
And this is the Inks and Lattes podcast, where we're spilling the ink and dishing out drinks.
So we're both members of the Creative Coffee Cafe Discord network, an amazing place where creatives can basically just come together, chill, bounce ideas off each other, get support from their fellow creatives. It's an amazing community, and today we're going to feature some work from some of our incredibly talented members.
Yeah, there's a few things we want to showcase today. First up, we have S.M.R. Burton's novel, Cherry Tree, a story from Havenburg. That's now available on Amazon, along with signed copies that are still available for purchase on her website. In this evocative coming-of-age tale, journey back to a time of innocence and nostalgia, where the bonds of friendship are tested and the echoes of first love linger in the crisp autumn air. Through laughter and tears, Kate and Jace learn that the greatest adventure lies not in the destination, but in the journey of self-discovery and the enduring power of friendship. So that's now available in both Kindle and paperback editions on Amazon, so make sure you snag your copy now.
Awesome. I'm so glad that finally released. That's an exciting release there.
Yeah, it's good. I just got my copy in yesterday, so I'm excited to read it.
I saw you got your copy, yeah.
Yeah.
Next, we want to talk about cafe member GRIDLAZER. GRIDLAZER is a vapor-style producer who dabbles in and across musical genres, from R&B to deep house. They have a passion for video games, scrunky beats, and their goal of creating an affordable library of tracks available for streamers, content producers, and small companies to use for any and all creative purposes. From background music to presentations to songs for an album, they believe there's always a track to be made. They have exclusive and non-exclusive commission works available, with public releases every 2 months on streaming platforms, along with Bandcamp exclusive releases being announced regularly. Merch and physical listening mediums are coming soon as well. Their new record, PremiumGRIDLAZER, releases on Bandcamp, Spotify, and the Apple Store on June 5th, with a rolling release on all other streaming platforms. All links are going to be listed in the description, so be sure to check that out.
Yeah, I'm going to have to remember about GRIDLAZER once I go back to class. So there are definitely some things where I might want to use some of the music for some of the productions that I end up doing. So I'll definitely have to keep that in mind.
Oh yeah, they have some great stuff.
Yeah, I listened to some of the stuff that it's really good, really unique too. I like how you can almost get custom made stuff too, right? Like that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Anyway, moving on, we're actually going to talk about some of the things that are offered by a few of our cafe members. First up, Justin at the DM's Guide is open for TTRPG map making commissions. You can DM him on Instagram at the DM's Guide, or reach out to him via his website.
I've seen Justin's work too. It's really, really great work. And then we also be sure to visit the Bewitchery, a small online shop that offers candles, spell kits, jewelry, fragrances, and much, much more.
Also, don't forget Wolf Wyo Designs. Vicky creates beautiful tumblers, mugs, and stemless wine tumblers. They offer pre-made designs and also accept custom orders. They just came out also with a special dripping creativity tumbler that's amazing, and 15% of the sales on that actually go back to the Creative Coffee Cafe itself. Again, all the links that we talk about can be found in the description.
We're going to go right into our topic of the week. This week, the topic of the week is going to be Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Anybody that knows us knows that DJ and I are big fans of Mass Effect, and we decided that we're going to talk about the franchise as a whole this week, and then possibly down the line, future episodes, we're going to deep dive into individual games. So if you want to go ahead and start, DJ.
Well, one thing, and I love the fact that Mass Effect, it's made by BioWare, right?
Right.
Canadian video game developer.
Really?
Love that Canadian content. Yeah.
I did not know that.
It was actually originally based they were based in Edmonton, Alberta.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, and then they signed partnership with the American publisher Interplay Productions, and then kind of went from there. They opened up some more studios. They got bought out by EA just before they released Mass Effect. Literally a month before Mass Effect came out, they got bought by EA. I guess EA probably looked at it and just like, okay, you know what? Yeah, we're gonna invest in this.
It was a good investment.
And I mean, I mean, like, Has it been bumpy? Yeah, I mean, they had Anthem that came out that really sucked, and like they just haven't actually released a whole lot of stuff since the Mass Effect series was out. Like, I had Dragon Age
Hmm.
Inquisition, but other than like Anthem, they've got the upcoming Dragon Age game coming out. But it seems like they've really slowed down on what they're making. I guess that the thing with being bought out by a big company, then all of a sudden you've got all these more grand designs that you go do.
Right.
When and I can't complain. Like Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 were really good, and that came out after they got bought out by EA.
Hmm.
So it hasn't been all bad, but it definitely has slowed down the amount of games that are coming out for them
Yeah,
as well.
which those are one of those franchises that like I don't mind waiting. You know what I mean? Just because when they rush it, you can feel that it's rushed. And so like Mass Effect franchise as a whole, like specifically speaking on the Legendary Edition, which for those that don't know, the Legendary Edition of Mass Effect is the combining of all three games and all of the DLCs into one massive game, and it is huge. They basically revamped everything. They made everything look better. It's much more crisp and clean looking, but as a whole, just the Legendary Edition is so good. Like, I know for me personally, my favorite thing about the Legendary Edition is that in Mass Effect 1, they fixed the way the Mako vehicle drives. That is the biggest improvement to me of anything.
Yet you can actually drive it now. Well,
Yeah,
it works.
that thing was a nightmare.
Oh my! I remember like that the one level where you're going where you have to on the planet and you have to drive it through all these different sections and you almost have to maneuver it
Hmm.
through various
Yes.
entrances and exits.
Like
It
rock
was
formations and
oh, it was
yeah,
such a
it's a
pain to get
nightmare.
through. Oh, it was so bad.
And you're like using your booster on it and you're just like, "Come on, why isn't it doing
You're
it?"
just
Like,
hoping the
yeah,
boost can just get you through the things that it can't get through
yeah,
normally. Like maybe if I boost
yeah. The
enough, it'll actually do something.
yeah, the Mako improvement was like the biggest improvement for me personally. The way it looks is all well and good. Like it looks way better, like I said.
Oh
But
yeah.
just for people that don't know, the Mass Effect franchise is amazing. Like the storyline does run through all three games, and you play as Commander Shepard. I am a fan of the Femme Shepard. The female Shepard
I am
is
I
the
am
way to go, in my
also
opinion.
a FemShep fan. I know Jennifer Hale is going to be at Fan Expo Toronto.
Mm,
Unfortunately, I'm
hmm.
probably not going to end up being able to go because I have some other commitments I'm likely going to have to do. I do know someone who's going to
Yeah.
go there, and I might ask them if they can get an autograph for me. But honestly, like the autograph, just I'd rather just actually meet her, just because she's been like, oh, she did such a good job as FemShep in that.
Oh, she's so good. Like she is so talented and just I don't know what it is about FemShep just feeling right. It just does. But I also like the characters that you can romance as FemShep. That is also, I mean, they're all good no matter what. But really, I think that's what my favorite thing about BioWare is the way that you can romance the characters. It's unmatched in any other franchise, in my opinion. I don't think any of them are as good as Mass Effect is.
I think what really helps too is that the way that the games were designed, where your choices kind of like it amplifies and it carries through all the
Mm,
different games. So your romance also carries through as well in that sense. And
yes.
so it really makes it feel more real in the sense where it's less of a choose A, choose B, and then like you romance the
Hmm.
character, you also have to take the choices you make in game affect who you can romance in the end too. So you have to
Yes.
really it really affects the choices that you make in the game and not just in the romance.
Yeah, and that's a big thing with me with Mass Effect is like it's that way in Dragon Age as well, where like you make choices, but for whatever reason, the Mass Effect choices seem to hit harder and matter more. And I mean, there's been times where I've like really had to think about what choice I was going to make in Mass Effect because some of those choices will come back to bite you through the franchise. I mean, I know that there's no big spoilers for people that haven't played it because I love people experiencing Mass Effect for the first time, but I know there's like one specific choice in Mass Effect 2, for example, that will affect whether or not a character from Mass Effect 3 survives. And I have played it both ways, and it's heartbreaking when they don't survive.
I
Like,
know
you
what
will
choice you're
actually
making.
lose characters if you make the wrong choice. Yeah, and it's just devastating when it happens. You're like, "No, what?" And then you, like, vow to yourself, "Next time I play, I'm gonna make the other choice." And they're not always cut and dry. That's what makes it so good.
It,
You could have it build up in your mind like, "Okay, that's clearly the better choice to make for the sake of everyone." But then wouldn't you know it, like the next game comes out and that choice could come back to bite you, even if it seemed like in the moment it was the right choice to make.
yeah, it's funny. It it creates like I know the actual like Renegade and Paragon thing. It wasn't as big of a deal as it felt it could have been. Like it felt like they could have been done more with that. It felt too binary in that kind of sense. But
Like, I don't usually go hard Renegade or hard Paragon. I kind of stay in the middle lane because I just my shepherd that I play as is pretty sassy. So like she does some shit that and like Chris and I have had many discussions about Mass Effect, and there's like certain choices that I've made that he is so adamant about that I made the wrong
there
choice,
is no
and we will
wrong
like
choice
argue it
though.
to the
Like
death.
that's what I do kind of like. I like that it calls it like Paragon and Renegade, where it's not so much that it's good or bad, but more in that it's like assertive or like not assertive in a way, where you're kind of just like, all right, I'm gonna try to do the
Right.
Renegade is kind of just like I'm gonna try to kick ass and I don't give a shit about, and whereas the Paragon is more like, I guess you could say it's
Hmm.
like the D&D kind of thing. Yeah, yeah.
It's like the
It's
diplomatic
kind of like
choices.
the chaos versus order choice in D&D.
Yeah, and that's honestly, I think, what makes Mass Effect so great is that I feel like in Dragon Age, it's pretty cut and dry, like what the better choice is when it comes to the actual story choices that you make, and they don't have huge repercussions. Like I know in Dragon Age Inquisition, for example, you can choose to side with the Templars or with the mages. And it's not a huge like, it'll change the gameplay, but it's not devastating if you, quote, like, "make the wrong choice." Mass Effect, you could lose your entire squad if you continually make bad choices,
I
and it's
Yeah,
rough.
and I think what makes Mass Effect so good in that sense, because you're mentioning like you have to choose between the Templars and the other ones, right? Mass Effect takes those choices and it personalizes them. Instead of it choosing like one group or the other, you're choosing like what to do between one person or another. And so like it takes that choice and it almost presents like, all right, you can choose, but it's basically like you have this one person that almost represents a group, and it personalizes like where like the choice that you make affects this person, not this group of people that you don't have an actual attachment to, but this person.
With Mass Effect, it's tough because I have never cried so hard in a video game franchise. Mass Effect 3 makes me literally bawl my eyes out in the end. Like, I will be crying throughout the entire 3rd game because things just get really rough.
Yeah, I know a few specific choices that you where it's just like, oh my god, and it's like I know the choice I have to make, but I don't know if I can do it, kind of idea.
Yeah, it's a rough one, but I think that's why it's such a great game because you get emotionally invested in the characters and the storyline is just very emotionally driven. And I think that it's just the best franchise, honestly, between BioWare in general is my favorite of all games, but anything they put out I'm a fan of. But Mass Effect is top notch. It
It's your
really is.
baby. It's your baby.
It is. It is.
It is. It's honest, and
But
it's my baby too. In that it's the only game that I've actually bought merchandise for. I have a Mass Effect sweater and a
hmm,
Mass Effect toque. I usually don't buy like merchandise and stuff like that, but it was just it meant so much to me. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll do it.
yep.
Yeah. It was kind of like, yeah. I guess we're just gonna pick like a video game that we love. And I'm gonna pick one that's actually is actually kind of relevant right now. One of my favorite games ever. Released I think 2 or 3 years ago, something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. Hades. Loved the game. The sequel just came out a couple of weeks ago in early access. And I remember when it got announced last year that they were actually, because they'd never, Supergiant, who makes the series, had never made a sequel before. It was kind of like we make a game, then we move on to the next game. So after Hades came out, and even after all the success, a lot of people were just like, well, they've never made a sequel, so they were just, no one thought that they would actually do it. And then they made the announcement last year, and they're like, oh boy, all right. So yeah, so Hades is it is an isometric hack and slash game as far as gameplay is concerned. So I'm not normally like a hack and slash player kind of guy. I'm not normally an action kind of player. I am the kind of games I play are actually probably similar to what you play, Eva, where it's more slower. You take your time. The RPGs, you can do some action and stuff like that, but like the more story based stuff too, right? Like Dragon Age and Mass Effect stuff like that. So Hades, like I never played it as much. I never paid much attention to it at first because it was that hack and slash. I'm just like, eh. I had played some Supergiant game before. They were okay. A lot of people loved them, but it was never my cup of tea. But this one is what they call a roguelike game. So in that sense, it's the kind of game where you go on what they call runs. So you keep playing, you keep going until you die, and if you die, you have to start all over again.
Ooh,
And no, and that's the thing, and then that's I
that,
remember.
that's one of those things that gets
But
me.
here's the thing, and this is basically a roguelike for people who don't like roguelikes, in the sense that no, and the thing with a lot of roguelikes is they don't really have much of a story because you're playing with things over and over and over again. There's not much point in making a story because you're just doing a lot of the same things over and over again. But this one, they have a story to it, and they actually link the story to the gameplay because you were playing Zagreus, the son of Hades, and the idea of the story is that you are trying to escape hell. You found out some information about Hades, your father, and you decide, okay, I want to escape hell. But the problem is, it's not easy to escape hell. Your father has made it so it's difficult, and so basically, the idea with how it matches with the roguelite is when you die, you end up right back at the beginning of hell again and have to try to escape again. But how the game works really well is it has a kind of procedural story to it. So depending on how your run goes, it reveals little tidbits of the story each time you play it again and again and again. So every time you play it, you will learn more and more about the story and all the different characters. There are a ton of different characters, all based off like the Greek gods. And so the idea too is that
Oh, see, that I
yeah,
like.
and so as you go, the idea too is that all the Greek gods up in Olympus are going to try to give you gifts to help you escape. So, and those gifts are basically power ups. So, and then they're all randomly generated. So every time you play that game, every time you play it, the hell you're trying to escape plays a little differently each time. So always have the different power ups. So you might have different power ups. You might have different areas that you end up going to. They'll look different. They won't be the same thing all the time. So that's why I like roguelikes in a way where it kind of has that basis of like, all right, here's an idea and kind of like a frame of how things are going to go, but everything in that frame is going to be randomized, so it's never going to be the exact same thing twice. But the nice thing too is like, so you do the run, you try to escape hell, you die, you end up back. So you, when you die, you go through the river Styx and end up back in hell again. You come through, you rise up through the river back into like the domain of hell, and the setting is where hell is basically like just this, like Hades is there sitting in his office just processing all the souls that are coming in, as if it's just a normal office job. They even have like a little office area where all these souls are just like sitting in the office doing all processing all this paperwork. And that's actually supposed to be your job. You're supposed to help with the paperwork. And you're like, no, I'm going to try to escape. I'm going to run away. It's the whole teenage angst thing is played up so much too. The voice acting as well, so good in this game. I don't think I've actually ever seen a game that has better voice acting than this. And they recorded, like I think they said, over 10 hours of voice acting for, and what's amazing too is that they actually there's the everything is just basically procedurally set up so it responds to how things go in the game. So basically how it goes, you do the run, you come back, and then in the main area you can actually earn upgrades and stuff like that. So every time you go, you'll be a little bit stronger every time too. So you'll procedurally get better, your character will get stronger, and then eventually, like with the idea of eventually escaping. And it can take some time to get to that point. There's also a really nice thing they introduced in this game called God Mode. If you click it on, what it does is that every time you die, your defense will slowly go up. So if you are having trouble with it, then it's basically them saying like, okay, if you're having trouble, you can activate the God mode. Eventually, it'll be harder and harder for you to die. So eventually, even if you are having trouble and you don't think you'll get there, you will get there eventually.
Right. I'll have to give it a try, honestly, because I don't play anything really that's not third person view. But that's like one of my things. But it does sound interesting, and I think I would like to give it a
Yeah, I
try.
think one thing that's good too is that this is the kind of game where the more you play it, the better you'll get at it. And so what's nice is you get this progression of like, hey, I notice I'm getting further and further than I did last time, and that helps keep you like into it as well, where you don't feel as frustrated because you're slowly getting further and further and further along.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I would be willing to try.
Yeah, yeah. If you don't like that roguelike kind of thing, this would be the perfect game to introduce someone to that kind of game and to like see like so even if you don't like any other roguelikes, you might like this one.
So my pick of the week is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Have you ever played the Witcher games?
I actually have played Witcher 3. I'd never finished it. I can't remember how far I got into it, but it was like
Yeah,
I was playing it for long. I mean, it's a long game, right?
it is.
And then I think I stopped at one point. There's so many games where I'll go into it and then I'll get like to a certain point and then I'll like something will happen and I'll stop playing it. I'll just never start playing it again.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those that when I start playing The Witcher 3, I can't play anything else when I'm playing that because it's such an intense, in-depth game. But for those of
Mhm.
you that don't know, you follow Geralt of Rivia. Um, the second game is not my favorite. I will be the first person to admit it. It's not my favorite. It's fine, but The Witcher 3 is where it's at. It has this incredible storyline with Geralt, and he is a what you call a witcher, and he basically hunts monsters. And it is such an amazing game. I can't like I push that game on people as often as I can because it's so, so good. And it's very much open world. The whole game is based on like a leveling system. So it's one of those where like you'll be going through an area and you have a horse named Roach that you ride around on, and um like you'll see an enemy up ahead, for example. Like if you see an enemy and it has like a skull head little logo above it, that's when you know to run like hell because you are way under leveled for that guy. So like it's one of
At least you
those.
get a warning system, right?
It is. And it's happened before where I'm like, running through some area and then I end up in a swamp somewhere and then all out of nowhere, there's some big monster baddie and it's got like the skull head above it and I'm just like, run away, run away. Like you have to kind of watch that, but it's just such a great storyline. There's this group called the Wild Hunt that is kind of after Geralt's sort of we'll call her like a daughter figure, Siri. And so that's kind of the main plot line is that they're after Siri. And there are even times in The Witcher 3 where you play as Siri, which is really cool. I was not expecting it when I started the
Okay.
game. And those bits are actually really fun. They're terrifying for someone like me who has like horrible anxiety when I game. But because all of a sudden you're playing as her and everything's slightly different. But it's just such a well thought out game. Like the storyline is amazing. It's visually beautiful. Like it's one of the most vivid, stunningly beautiful games I've ever played. Um, there's a lot of detail put into The Witcher 3. A lot of stuff like um, when you come upon an enemy, there are certain enemies, excuse me, there are certain enemies that require certain things to beat them. And for example, when you're fighting men, you use a steel sword. And when you're fighting monsters, you have to use the silver sword. And that is a very important detail because my first playthrough of it, I came across like I think it was a troll or something like that. And I probably tried to beat this troll for like 40 minutes. Just my first playthrough ever. I'm like, why aren't you dying? Like, I'm not this far under leveled. What is happening? And then I like went through all of my health boosters, everything that could be keeping me alive. And I'm like, why is this thing not dying? Like I'm barely putting a dent in it. And then I realized 45 minutes into this stupid battle that should have taken me 3 minutes
Oh
that I
no.
was literally using the steel sword
The
against a
wrong
monster.
sword.
Like I had just pulled the wrong sword out. And like it's one of those things where I was like, son of a bitch. Like, and then I had wasted all of my
I'm
health
sure you didn't
boosters.
forget after that though.
No, never again. That's a mistake you only make once. And it's just like, it's
I
cool
can so
though.
see myself doing that.
Yeah, it was a nightmare because I was like, oh my God, like I'm not even putting a dent in this thing. What is happening? And and then I realized and I was like, ugh, okay. And then as soon as I switched swords, it was like 2 slashes later and it was dead. So like it's really particular in that way. Like if you're fighting a wraith, you have to have certain potions and certain oils that you put on your blade and stuff like that in order to kill that particular monster. So it's very cool. You get like a glossary of all the monsters that you come across as you come across them. And you basically learn that as you go. And it seems like a lot at first. I'm not going to lie. Like The Witcher is one of those games that's why it's hard because initially it's a lot to take in, but then once you get it, you've got it. You know what I mean? It becomes like second nature. But
Yeah.
there's another really good aspect, and it's so silly. You can play a card game in The Witcher called Gwent.
Oh
Oh,
yes,
I'm
I
obsessed
remember
with
playing. That was one of
Gwent.
my fun.
Yes, like
I
there's
love little extra games like that.
yes, it's like a card game, and you can do Gwent tournaments and all of that. And sometimes there were days where I was like, I'm literally just gonna go play a Gwent tournament. I don't feel like fighting monsters today. And that's what's
Spend the whole
cool.
like 12 hours of the day just playing Gwent.
Yeah, and like, and I like that you can kind of build your Geralt's personality a bit depending on the choices you make and like the dialogue options and stuff. Like my Geralt loves to go to brothels. He just does. He goes to all the brothels. Every time there's a brothel in the area, I'm like, okay, let's go. And the cutscenes, let's just say, the cutscenes are fantastic. They are
You got a very horny
the
Geralt.
the cutscenes are fantastic in The Witcher 3. And you can romance in The Witcher 3 too. My personal opinion is that there's only one correct romance. I won't say who, but I am that person who like there's one correct romance. But you should definitely check The Witcher 3 out if you haven't already. It's a wonderful game. It's a great intro if you then want to watch the series if you haven't already. So yeah, I highly recommend The Witcher 3.
Yeah, I've seen the Witcher series actually too. So like, I definitely want to get back into Witcher 3 at some point.
Yeah, it's a great game. Yeah, that's basically gonna be all we have for this week's episode of Inks and Lattes. Thanks again for hanging out with us, you guys. We're going to be here every Wednesday as part of the Dripping Creativity podcast, hosted by the amazing Chris Corbin. So please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already.
Yes, thank you again, Chris, for all the work that you do for us. If you want more information about the Creative Coffee Cafe and how you can get involved, visit the website creativecoffeecafe.com for more info, and the sign up form for the Discord can be found there as well. Lastly, if you have news or projects or anything that you'd like to share, send it over to submit@creativecoffeecafe.com, and if we can, we'll get it on the next episode. Thanks again for tuning in to Inks and Lattes, where we're spilling the ink and dishing out drinks.
Bye.